Welcome. It's so lovely to have you here today, and I'm really excited to be back, to be giving this talk again at Design at Large series after 6 years, and my research has changed a lot since the first time. So who am I? What's my background? I'm first and foremost trained as a chemist. I was a young chemist in Turkey. I was such a nerd, I was even in chemistry Olympics. Hey, Anna, so good to see you. And then I decided to study architecture. So I actually got my undergraduate degree in architecture. Then I decided to study computer science, so I did a master's in computer science. Then I thought I should study UI UX and design. So I got another master's. I think I'm forgetting one master's in between. Finally, I got my PhD in neuroscience from Duke University in 2017. Why am I qualified to talk about speculative biology? Because I wrote my dissertation on this topic. And for the longest time, my work had been at the intersection of biology, and neuroscience is a subset of that for sure, technology, biological technology, which we know as biotech, and design. So I come from an architectural design background, but my heart was always in art. So I'm going to talk about speculative biology, which is in the title of this talk. I'm going to talk about synthetic biology, which is a much larger topic that we should all be interested in. And I actually brought a friend, a papaya, who is very qualified to talk about that as well. And hey, and I'm going to talk about our Biotech Future, also inserting a topic called Bioarch. So hopefully for those of you who've never heard of these things, this will be an introduction. For those of you who are very advanced, please, add to my presentation and ask questions. So around, I think like it was before COVID, maybe around 2016, Nicholas Negroponte, founder of MIT Media Lab, also the author of Bits and Atoms, made this claim: bio is the new digital. So together with some other visionary thinkers like Freeman Dyson, with this bold statement, biology took its place next to other sciences like computer science or even physics as something that needs to be taken seriously. This is Freeman Dyson. He had a very long life, and I actually got the chance to meet him. I was his groupie for a long time. And Freeman Dyson was another person who, in a paper called Our Biotech Future, published in 2007, told us that this century, 21st century, is the century of biology. He claimed that the last century was the century of physics and computer science, and this century was the century of biology. I love this quote by him, and I'm going to read it. Domesticated biotechnology, he says, once it gets into the hands of housewives and children, that's a little sexist, will give us an explosion of diversity of living creatures rather than the monoculture crops that the big corporations prefer. New lineages will proliferate to replace those monoculture farming and deforestation have destroyed. Designing genomes will be a personal thing, a new art form, as creative as painting or sculpture. So he has a lot to say to back up this claim. He saw that just like personal computing started as these massive devices, machinery that would fill up a room and shrank into our pockets, right, or into our watches, he saw that biotech will also become ridiculously accessible and cheap. And he believed that children and whoever is in the house would be able to design their own genomes. Now, the series is about resilience, and I didn't really give it much thought before I sat down to prepare this talk. So what I usually do, like most of us do, is I did some literature survey on what this word means. Is it a buzzword or could it be a purpose? Because we hear this word a lot. A good definition comes from American Psychological Association. And according to their definition, resilience is identified as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. Now, when we look at the papers or studies around increasing resilience as a psychological toolkit, etc., we keep hearing or we keep reading this word bouncing back, coming back stronger than before. And I love looking at stock imagery because it cracks me up. I put resilience in, and these were the stock imagery that I found. It's usually a flower like coming out of the cracks. But then I started thinking, is this really an accurate demonstration of what resilience is? I'm going to show you something else. I thought these two guys were the picture of resilience. These are sea turtles, marine turtles. I've been using these images for, I think, 12 years now. It's a good documentation of war between polymers, keratin versus high-density polyethylene. And to me, this was more accurate in that they didn't bounce back feeling much greater than how they were, but these marine turtles actually survived plastic pollution. Probably they have horrible digestive problems, their morphology is completely warped, but they're alive. Then the term bouncing back is very important, right? So what are those things we will bounce back from as citizens of 21st century? You can bounce back from a nasty comment online. You can bounce back from a severe cold or COVID. You can bounce back from a bad breakup, from divorce. You can bounce back from unemployment. You can bounce back from cancer. You can bounce back from segregation, discrimination, ethnic cleansing, even genocide. You can bounce back from earthquakes. You can bounce back from natural disasters. You can bounce back from soil depletion, air pollution, plastics in your bloodstream, which is now a verified fact. We can bounce back from habitat loss, deforestation, ecocide. We can bounce back from extinction. Maybe we can even bounce back from death. Now, let's focus on extinction, because I have good examples on this. Can one bounce back from extinction? This is a project that I actually had the honor of exhibiting with in Venice Architecture Biennial in 2021. I'm just going to play the film a little bit. We don't have much time.
Yeast puffs up bread and ferments beer. But for scientists at Ginkgo Bioworks in Boston, the microbes are taking them back more than a century to resurrect, for the first time ever, the scent of an extinct flower.
Oh, I can do that too. All right. Now so this team led by Christina Agapakis, who is the creative director in Ginkgo Labs, a company, a very big biotech company based in Boston. Their HQ is in Boston. They went to actually botanical archives and found these two Hawaiian plants that went extinct. And I won't be able to play the whole thing. It shows, actually there's a really funny moment where people smell these extinct flowers and they describe them. And there's a blind test where they're not told that they're from Hawaii and no one talks about the volcanic smell. And there's another one where they're told that it's from Hawaii and everybody's talking about rocks and volcanic smells. Anyhow, this was one project that actually did create the genome of an extinct species. Now there's something even bigger than this.
Yeast.
The woolly mammoth. Has anyone heard of this? Woolly mammoth coming back? Who wants the woolly mammoth back? No one? Just me? A couple of people. All right, let's play this because this is a really interesting film. No. No, don't do that to me. I tried to download this, anticipating this moment, but Colossal, the company, the company wouldn't allow the download of a film. So I really want to play this. Let me see if it will play on my computer or YouTube. So I'm going to do this for you.
Woolly mammoths have been extinct for about 10,000 years.
But now, one extinct animal might be getting a reboot.
A Jurassic Park-like mission to resurrect the legendary woolly mammoth.
Colossal, a new bioscience and genetic engineering company, has grand plans
to resurrect the woolly mammoth, you heard me right, and return him back to the Arctic.
Oh, hell yeah! I'm gonna get a mammoth.
They want to repopulate the Siberian tundra with woolly mammoths, like that movie, made from modified elephant DNA. They're doing this to help the environment. Do you think Jeff Goldblum will be in charge of them?
Lead scientist and co-founder of Colossal, George Church,
is teamed up with this company, Colossal.
Can you bring back the woolly mammoth? Because I would love to see one. I'd love a woolly steak. Can we get one?
Yeah.
Your new startup, aptly named Colossal, just raised $50 million.
You guys are the guys who are going to bring the woolly mammoth back, right?
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's cool, right? We want to rebuild the ecosystem, but they want to do it by bringing back the woolly mammoth.
They have assembled enough DNA
to genetically resurrect a woolly mammoth by 2027.
This fetus will eventually reach 200 pounds before birth.
Do you know who I miss? Woolly mammoths. Bring back woolly mammoths.
So the company behind this is Colossal, and the mastermind is, as you say, Dr. Church. They said somewhere that they raised $50 million. That's true. I double-checked as of yesterday. And there are certain goals behind this project. It's not just about resurrecting the mammoth, but there are a lot of research goals that can be accomplished by embarking on this. But this is a reality, they're doing it. Now, the question is, can we bring back bison, Amazon river dolphins, vaquitas, or old-growth forests? And if that's the case, what are the conditions for this? Now, I have some numbers. Bison is back, actually, but between mid-1800s to the end of 1800s, about 3 million of bison was killed and removed from their ecosystems. It was a major ecocide. Amazon river dolphins, I want to talk about them today because just this past September was one of the hottest Septembers to date. I don't know if you noticed it here in San Diego. We didn't notice it as much. But the Amazon River hit extreme temperatures, and 15% of the entire population of Amazon river dolphins died. So when I think of resilience, the dolphins that didn't die are a good example of resilience, right? But their population is dwindling. It's very likely that they won't survive the upcoming summers or fall. Do you know about vaquitas? These really beautiful creatures. I actually should have put a picture because they're so cute, with their big eyes and like almost smiling faces. If dolphins are considered to be cute, vaquitas are like the, epitome of cuteness. There were only 19 of them left as of 2019. And they happen to be right around us in Baja. And currently, we don't know how many of them are left. So these are other species to think about and bringing back. Think about bringing back. Can they bounce back? And what are the conditions? How many more companies do we need to bring everything that's going extinct? Those are some questions to think about. Because this is a talk about biotech and we're in Busy Design Lab, we got to look at some numbers and capital. First off, did you know that San Diego is called the Biotech Beach? That's the term. I didn't know it. You're shaking your head. I had no idea. But we live in the Biotech Beach. Our city actually has a record number of biotech startups, about 700. And it attracts so much capital. As you see in these numbers, especially after COVID, there was a huge surge in terms of investing in biotech. And there's, of course, FDA and approvals and a lot of regulations to pass by. But it's important to note that, for instance, in Europe, everything is regulated, private and public. Here in the States, if you're doing private research, it's not regulated. If it's public, it is regulated. And there are parts of the world where there's no biotech regulation at work. However, you will see that the investment in biotech is in the range of billions, and it keeps increasing. Although after COVID, because COVID is now over, there is a decline. We see a consistent, up arrow. So what does BioCapital look at? What are some topics that BioCapital look at? Number one, food, because that's a future that we will all have to live through. With increasing population, there's going to be demand for access to healthy food. Resilient agriculture, actually when I was doing the research on the term resilient, it wasn't only in psychology, it was also used in agricultural science. For instance, climate resilient crops is a huge research topic. Algae, because it's so modifiable, is another topic. In health, pharmaceuticals and drug testing, there are a lot of labs like Organovo, whose sole purpose is to create human cells. Without using the human test subjects, you can test drugs on them. Genetic screening for genetic disease, basically disease prevention, killing it before it happens. A good example of this would be the Gene Drive project to eradicate malaria, and actually our very own Tata Institute does this. You know the green building on campus? Does anyone know the building I'm talking about? It's like that way. And at the 4th floor, Gene Drive is happening together with Craig Venter Center, which is also very close to us. Vaccines, we all got them, I guess. Reproductive health is another one. I have a couple slides on this. Although it's skewed, we can discuss how it can be fixed. In architecture and urban design, for instance, bioluminescence, phosphorescence, fluorescence, and bringing it to trees or certain urban elements to light up the cities at dark during the night is something people are working on. Blight-resistant urban plants, urban botany. But at the largest scale, planetary health, the extinction, that's what Colossal calls the woolly mammoth project. Rewilding is another one. New organs to filter out toxicity. I just put it there because I work on that. Fast-growing forests and carbon sequestration can also be another thing. Now, I said that I'm going to talk about synthetic biology, speculative biology and Bioarch. So let's start with synthetic biology. I'm not going to take too many slides on this. No? Okay, well. This is a project by Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg, who made this animation.
Synthetic biology is turning to the living kingdoms for its materials library. We no longer have to rely on polluting petrochemicals. Instead, we can pick a feature from an existing organism. We extract a cell, then identify the chromosome that contains the DNA code we need. The DNA is grouped into genes that encode the proteins. Which produce the feature we're looking for. We copy these genes and using a plasmid, we insert them into a biological chassis, whether an existing bacteria or a synthetic cell, and allow this new, now synthetic organism to clone itself. All of these bacteria now carry our simple feature. Using the same process, we could build in more functions to invent novel materials, products, and tools. But as we add more and more features, the complexity increases. How can we control all of the unknowns? We do this to different degrees. The simplest is by hacking existing bacteria by inserting standardized DNA components, or by genetically engineering whole systems to introduce into the genome of our bacteria. Or we can build minimal genomes from the bottom up, without all of the surplus information. Entirely synthetic cells are possible too, designed and grown in the lab. Some say they're safer since they're simpler and more predictable. One day we'll be able to engineer more complex synthetic organisms too, made up of many kinds of cells with different roles. But how will we classify what is natural or unnatural when life is built from scratch? The tree of life is always changing, ever since we first created it. Now we're adding to the living kingdoms for the first time, but these synthetic organisms are no different to other life forms, except that we invented.
Well, she's going to come to this graph anyways, and can you please pass this book? Thank you. Daisy Ginsburg made this film in 2007, and back then, everybody was really excited about the potential and premise of synthetic biology, especially in the arts and design, because this gave an entire new toolkit for designers to rethink the future or material science or what kind of products are possible. But the actual big, how to say this, rupture or paradigm shift happened in 2013. And this is when CRISPR Cas9 was introduced. 7 years later, Emmanuelle Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna won split the Nobel Prize in chemistry for this discovery. Are we all familiar with CRISPR Cas9? In short, these are gene scissors, and from before the introduction of CRISPR Cas9, it was cumbersome and a lot more expensive to target a specific sequence and take it out or replace it with something. But now with CRISPR Cas9, it's very possible. I actually did a workshop and modified some bacteria. I could do it. It was kind of mind-blowing. Another trend in biotech or synthetic biology.
You're looking at a 3D bioprinted lung-mimicking air sac that's able to pump air into airways, mimic blood flow, and was built using living cells. Granted, it's smaller than a penny, but this lung-mimicking air sac could bring us one step closer to understanding how we could replicate human organs using patient cells, which could one day help.
She's going to talk a lot, so I'm just going to skip. But in this film, they're talking about an artificial lung with alveoli and everything in the circulatory system that's built via completely synthetic terms, synthetic means. Now, another key area is bioprinting. And Dr. Antonia Itala is a main figure in this domain. I'm so happy to introduce Dr. Antonia Itala to you if you haven't encountered their work before. Again, being a scientist groupie, I went to Wake Forest, where he teaches and does research. Actually, he doesn't teach, just does research. And I had breakfast with him. And then I was on the stage with him, which was excellent for me. But they used, in his lab, they used an actual not 3D printer, a regular printer, paper printer. And they shifted the cartridge with human cells so that they were able to print skin cells to, for instance, help burn patients, etc. I think in 2011 and 2013, they were able to print bladder. Now they're working on printing more complex organs, such as the kidney.
Thanks for joining us on American Medicine Today. I'm Kimberly Vermel, joined by Ethan Euchre.
Glad to be here.
Our friend Jeff Wagstaff.
Hello, friend. Thanks for having me.
And world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. Alfred Bonatti of the Bonatti Spine Institute. Now, this is truly exciting because joining us is Dr. Anthony Atala, director of Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine, where they have developed a 3D bioprinter, which can literally construct organs in a laboratory in a matter of hours. Thank you for being here.
Nice to be with you today.
This is again a long one, but there was a note there if you couldn't read it. It is now calculated that for about $100,000 you can 3D print a kidney, which might really change the way we think of organ transplant. Now, these are some newest developments that I curated for you, my lovely audience. For instance, this is very new, I think from September 22nd, 2023. Human trials of artificial wombs could start soon. US regulators will consider clinical trials of a system that mimics the womb, which could reduce death and disability for babies born extremely preterm. So this image was used heavily on this particular media, but this image is actually from 2017 when they were able to grow sheep embryos up to 4 weeks. Don't know what happened to the embryos after that. This is a project, a proposal, a test by a PhD, a Dutch PhD student, again from 2022, and a more prosthetic artificial womb for the same surface. And this image is an SME image of a kidney grown in a pig embryo, which was made up of up to 70% human cells. It's not 100% human cells, but what are the implications? We can use these animals as organ farms. So most of these things were more science fiction back, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, but currently we're really entering into this realm. Now I want to show you some examples from Bioarch. The first one is a canned feces by Piero Manzoni. So the history of Bioarch dates back to surrealism. If you never heard of surrealism, it was a bunch of really cool people who lived in Italy in French that came up with really interesting ways to discuss art. It was also a pre-war, during war kind of movement where they were really obsessed with what life or anything meant. So deconstructing meaning was what they did. And Piero Manzoni does this work in back then, the first Bioarch piece was a donkey with a brush attached to their tail. And it was the first time a living organism was legitimately used to make art. So the definition of bioart can be very expansive. As long as there's a living system or a living organism that's used, or biomatter that's used in art directly, we consider it bioart. In this case, Piero Manzoni chose their own feces and canned it and called it artist's shit. This is in, yes, it's there. And they displayed this as an artwork. You can imagine the turmoil they caused back then in the 60s. Actually, and the Warhol came up with their Campbell soup idea a year later. Well, I wonder what the inspiration was. Now, another really interesting work, I'm going to skip a bunch of milestones in bioart because I don't have time, is Victimless Leather by Orhan Katz and Ionat Zor. This is a partnership that's coming from Western Australia. Their lab is called Symbiotica, and it's based in Perth. And in 2004, they made the first victimless leather, basically a tiny scaffold that held skin cells on it. And this was shown in the design of the Elastic Mind exhibition in 2008, making history as the first artwork that had to be killed at the end of the exhibition. This is a natural history of the enigma Eduardo Kac. Eduardo Kac is the mastermind behind the world's most popular glow-in-the-dark bunny, Alba. But I chose this piece because this one is more eerie. The bunny is too cute. And here he claims that he used his own genome, that where his venation was expressed, or his vascular system was expressed, and that he joined it with that of the petunia, calling the new flower that he created Doudna. Now let's go back to 1990s again. I don't know if you've heard about this week. Damien Hirst, anyone? he's a British artist, and also known as a young British artist, not young anymore, who made this piece, commissioned by Saatchi, a collector. 20,000 pounds is given to him. He takes the money, gives it to a fisherman. The fisherman goes and kills the shark, and Damien Hirst organized a whole team of people to put the massive shark in a tank of formaldehyde. Now, he called it the impossibility of death in the mind of someone living. When it was first launched, and Damien Hirst is very young at that point, it was like, it shook the art world. I happened to be in London there at that point. I was learning English. And I remember reading this on a newspaper, because we didn't have TikTok back then. And I was like, oh my God, this is art? How is this even possible? Well, what happens is, formaldehyde doesn't actually keep a massive creature like the shark intact for over 30 years. So now there are a lot of rotting sharks killed by Damien Hirst around the globe. I want to show you this piece around sharks. This is Ai Hasegawa, a Japanese speculative designer and artist who made a very interesting interface design. This is actually very fitting for where we are. She made a system that will connect a human mother to their shark embryo. So her bold claim was, and I'm just going to play the film, that there are already too many humans. Perhaps women can give birth to other species. So she made a series called I Want to Deliver a Shark, and this one is called I Want to Deliver a Dolphin. I know she's given birth to other creatures, but she's given birth to many other beautiful art projects if you want to look at her website. I'm going to skip this one because I'm running out of time. I'm going to move on to speculative biology, and this will be a domain where I'm very active at. I started designing speculative biological systems as an MFA student, actually, at UCLA. So this happens to be the first project where I designed, I can't play it. All right, I'm just going to skip it because we don't have time. Oh, well. I started designing genitalia for this project.
Synthetic biology is the design of biological systems not found in nature. Speculative biology is an artistic take on synthetic biology. All art modifies and orchestrates the human sensorium. Art plays with sensations. Can we generate new sensations by designing new organs, new biological systems? Can we engineer the human body to multiply, intensify, and purify pleasure?
Endings are distributed across the body, and I thought about whether we could, replace them, increase certain sensations in certain organs, etc., and whether we could have plug-and-play genitalia so that people can experience different genders, different types of sexualities without going through extreme transformation. So that was the first project I did. Then the next project where I think performed speculative biology as a methodology was an ecosystem of excess. And again, this is a very old project. We're looking at images from 2004. This image is by Chris Jordan. Back then, it was just becoming public knowledge that in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is a floating nexus of plastic waste. And Chris Jordan went there, documented this. This is actually the contents of the digestive tract of a Laysan albatross. And as a young mind back then and a young heart, I guess, I was really heavily impacted by this. I just asked myself, why on earth is there a lighter or a bottle cap in the digestive tract of a Laysan albatross that's in the middle of nowhere, literally? They live, their breeding ground is the Midway Island. So I designed organs that could metabolize, that could sense and metabolize plastics. Again, I don't have time to play the whole thing, but I called this entire series an ecosystem of excess, and I imagined new life forms that emerge in a contemporary multi-use that can deal with plastics in ways current life forms can't. So for me, the biggest part was really thinking about this at an organ level. I was struck by the fact that unlike the human, actually most humans can't do this either. I don't know how many of you can tell if something you're wearing is plastics or not, or when you touch plastics, if you can tell if it's like very synthetic or more organic. But living things, living organisms, marine organisms can't discern. So I wanted to have a sense organ for them that could help them with that. And I wanted to make a stomaximus. This is actually something that can be built with bioprinting, which had tiny vesicles in it that hosted 13 different bacteria to deal with 13 different types of plastic that's abundant in our environment. Now, the big question of the day is, what are we having for dinner? It's almost dinner time. Do you want to have sushi? All right, then. So this is, again, super recent news. This is a company called Arctic Fish, and I hope the film plays. It's Iceland's largest salmon farming company, and it's owned by a Norwegian company called Mowi, which is, I think, either the first or the second leader in salmon industry globally. And 5 days ago, I saw this news, and I was like, oh my God, I have really disgusting material for my talk, should show this. And this is lice, which is a very big problem for fished salmon in general. And this new strain of lice was so effective, it spread to entire populations within, like, I think 5 or 6 days. Or 2 weeks, they had to remove, tons of fish from these farms. And here on the left, to my left, you see Aku Advantage salmon. This is a regular salmon, and this is the Aku Advantage salmon. And this is an Atlantic salmon. Aku Advantage salmon has just been approved as FDA just approved it as a safe food. It's a genetically modified salmon. Now, this quote really struck me about the video that just stopped playing. This is a Vega, who is a kayaker and an activist who saw the lice-infected salmon, and she says, they were moving very slowly like zombie fish, dead but moving. So then what are we having for dinner? Are we having zombie fish? Or are we having Frankenfish?
In supermarkets, the packaging on Scottish salmon shows pristine waters and projects an image of a clean and natural product. But wild salmon is no longer fished commercially anywhere in the UK. Instead, hundreds of thousands of fish at a time are raised in pens suspended in the open sea. The salmon swim. All
right, I don't have much time, but this Aqua Bounty is a real company, and they got FDA approval. The genetically modified salmon is expected to hit shelves within this year. So keep an eye on that. Now, the fish didn't look very appetizing to me. So shall we have chicken? This is, most of you are probably familiar of the growth of the breast area of the chicken. And from the 50s on, the size of chicken, especially chicken that's used as, I think it's called broiler chicken, that we eat, because there are 3 types of chicken, the ones that just make eggs, the ones that are only for meat, and the ones that do both. And in 2005, they were 4.2 kilograms. I found another visual that showed their actual size as of 2023, but the graphics wasn't good, and I'm a designer, so I didn't put that one. They are now around 5 kilograms, so they even increase more. And there is also this kind of issue around eating chicken, in that of all the 876 different species or different families of chicken fowl that surround globally, we are only focused on 2 of them. So I like this headline, chickens became like Apple and Android phones, so it's only 2 breeds that we consume. Now, on this front, I wanted to show a speculative biology project by Non-Human Nonsense, a very young artist group. Again, I won't be able to play the whole thing, but as I speak, as we're in this room, I think it wasn't every second, but every hour 140,000 chicken is killed. Like, chicken is the most abundant food source for protein source for developed countries. So there's massive consumption of chicken. So they proposed that chicken are synthetically dyed pink, and they can become a strata in mountains and landfill, etc.
Pink chicken projects suggest changing the colour of the entire species, Gallus domesticus, to pink. Why? Human actions have altered the Earth so profoundly that we have entered a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. The stability of the biosphere is threatened, with an uncomfortably high probability of an uninhabitable planet within the next century. This devastation will leave traces in the strata for geologists of the future, such as plastic pollution, soot from power stations, nuclear fallout, and surprisingly, the fossilized bones of the global proliferation of the domestic chicken.
All right, unfortunately, I can't play the whole thing, but they propose that pink bones will make a strata and will give a message to future generations. I worked on this the chicken issue myself. So the project I want to introduce to you is called Fool's Fall. And in my design, I was really concerned about the fact that chicken aren't moving anymore because of their size, the increased size within generations. They can't carry themselves. And despite the cage-free movement that proposes better living conditions for the animals, the majority of chicken farms keep their animals in cages. So I looked at a lot of gruesome footage, and then coming from architecture where minimalism is the thing, I asked myself, does the chicken need a nervous system? What are nervous systems for? They are for especially the brain. Why do we have a centralized nervous system? To move. That's what the neuroscientist Daniel Woolpert says. Any animal that moves needs a centralized nervous system. But if they're not moving, why would they need one? So I removed it, and this is what we can think of biological minimalism, form follows function. When you remove the nervous system for movement and also the digestive tract, this needs to be removed. Then there's plenty of space for ovaries, muscle growth, etc. So Fool's Fall, which can be installed in a kitchen counter. It's a vastly diminished animal. Not an animal maybe anymore. We can talk about that too. It's practical and customizable. It's simple, right? It's a synthetic biological manifestation of form follows function, and it's an ovarian tribute to modernism. And I'm just going to show you this one, where you can actually work with the Fool's Fall to express exotic feathers, which you can then pluck and use in your, arts and crafts projects. It's fed through, a fluid, a pre-digest fluid injected to its veins, etc., etc. So speaking of chicken, or actually dinner, let's move on to another commonly consumed type of food, red meat. around 2013, Dutch scientist Mark Post unveiled
consumer product out of it. It may take 10 years, maybe even earlier, but 10 years is probably a good guess.
The burger tasted, it had a very sort of bland, neutral flavor. The thing that made it most similar to real beef was the texture. When I bit into it, I was impressed with the bite and how it did have a kind of density that was familiar.
I have been waiting for this day.
Impossible Burger, but this was in 2013, and in this film, if you watch the whole thing, Mark Post says, well, within 10 years this can come. He was right. In 10 years, we actually have lab-grown meat approved for sale. So it's arrived. This is from this year, actually. And I want to show you this project. I want to show this to you very much. I just won't have control over the video, I'm afraid, because this is an artist, a bioartist, and a friend, Teresa Schubert. Let me try doing this. Who grow her own cells in the lab environment and made synthetic meat out of herself, and then she ate it.
Autophagus demo performance is myself.
Dehumanism puts an end.
So I'm just going to show you the part where she's trying it. Her face is priceless. I think it's here. That's her thigh. She took the sample from her thigh, and then she worked with the lab to make this much of the top thigh. She wasn't going to the gym to get really strong thighs. She just had it done outside of her body. It. No, did I miss the part where she's eating it? Come on, Teresa. Yes, there we go. Yes, her face. I wish they stayed on that face for another second. But she won the Golden Nika for this project. Now, another question we can ask, and now we can move on, vegetarianism after seeing all that gruesome meat stuff. What shall we plant in our garden? I brought this. I was hoping to serve it to you, but then we decided maybe not a good idea. There are certain crops that are completely GMO that are available in the markets. Buying them organic doesn't really make a difference because that's a completely different, so I'm going to put the papaya, my friend, here. And canola, soybean, corn, etc. Here is a project, a synthetic speculative biology project where this very young artist proposed.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
She proposed fruits that were completely synthetic as opposed to just like lab-grown meat. These would be either bioprinted or synthetic, etc. She has a very cheerful take on it. But this is actually a really interesting that maybe we don't think of GMO as a part of our lives, but it's there. Now, I think I'll have to skip this project, but I don't have time. I proposed a project based on Freeman Dyson's claim. Maybe I'll just play it in the background, if it plays, where we genetically engineer plants, especially trees. Can you just play video? Yes. That grow really fast. The project is called Dark Botany.
We want to bring the plant world into the public eye and public heart. Plant sensing, plant hormones, plant communication and intelligence, the inner world of plants remain a scientific mystery. However, plants are the most common genetically modified organisms. Transgenic crops are all around us. We don't seem to have a problem with plants as GMO. The molecular basis of plant life is fascinating. It's an interesting coincidence that the rules of heredity were discovered via close study of pea plants by Gregor Mendel in 1800s. Altering plant biology in the service of humans is an old concept. What's new is designing a plant ecosystem for the sole purpose of stopping climate change. Whatever solutions we ought to have for climate crisis, we ought to have them now. The next 28 years are very critical for us. By 2050, without new policies, global greenhouse gas emissions are projected to increase by 50%, primarily due to a 70% growth in energy-related carbon dioxide emissions. Is photosynthesis efficient enough? Green is the color of photosynthesis as blue and red light is kept, and green is reflected by chlorophyll. However, green is a high energy bandwidth, and if it was absorbed, photosynthetic efficiency could increase 5-fold. When plants absorb the entirety of the visible spectrum, they will look black. Black forests, black lakes, black meadows, black farms with black crops, black gardens with black flowers. Welcome to dark botany.
Horrible with timing myself today, so I'm just going to skip a whole project where we look at genetically modified people. In 2018, a Chinese scientist actually genetically modified 2 human embryo sisters, and that caused a huge problem. There have been 4 moratoriums in biotech or biotechnology so far, and the last one was on editing the human genome after what that scientist did. But to this day, we don't know if those embryos turned into healthy adults. So I'm just going to skip all of this. This was an entire, group of characters that are genetically modified. This one, Artemis, is my favorite, and I'm going to show it at the end of February at ICA Central in Balboa Park. This is a product of Nike. She's an athlete. And I'm just going to skip all of this stuff. Hi. I can. Just going to skip this one too, because this guy, Brian Johnson, is a huge inspiration for me. I don't know if you know about him, but it is known that he takes 120 pills a day and spends $2 million a year to just stop and bounce back from aging. And I love this quote, "I'm 45, a billionaire obsessed with staying young and hard to date." Yes. So I'm going to end with these 2 slides. Bioethics, the big question. And this is why it's important that we have this conversation in these buildings, in these rooms where we talk about design. There's a huge emphasis on AI, UI, UX, etc. But as you see, with the revenue, with the industry push, with like everything that's actually building the infrastructure for these labs and FDA approvals of GMO food, etc., this is a part of our lives. Even artificial wombs is a reality, are becoming a reality. Now, if we don't know about these things, then we will have no say on what's coming next. Human gene editing, human cloning, human organ farming, genetically modified food, lab-grown meat, 3D printed organs, biomedical technologies that actually alter people's genome before they are born. These are all big questions. And bioethics can be simplified as, if we can do it, shall we do it? I want to show you this slide. This is from World War II. I don't know if there are German speakers among us, but the poster reads, this is from Reichsmark. The poster reads, 60,000 Reichsmark, this is their currency. 60,000 marks is what this person suffering from hereditary illness costs the community in his lifetime. Fellow citizen, that is your money too. Now we have a term for this kind of approach, eugenics. And when I first encountered this in a bioethics paper, I got chills. I was like, did they really have posters across the city in Berlin? Like next to my favorite club, 56 years ago, this was a thing, but it was. So it's kind of easy to slip into this kind of cultural blind spot. And we should also acknowledge the fact that technology is power, and whoever speaks the language of technology is powerful. However, ethics, which was in the past part of, I would say, religion or moral decision-making, let's call it that, insert democracy, insert religion, this is very important to make meaningful decisions. And we should also always remember that although most of these things look like it's a need, we need to feed people, but maybe we don't need to feed people with salmon. It's about desire, right? So we're in the middle of this triangle, and we're making decisions. After this, I have a whole deck of slides on what I do in Design Lab, but I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to just accept questions or comments at this point. I didn't time myself properly, so thank you so much. I'm just going to skip to the very end. Come on, slides. Okay, we'll have to do this now. In a nutshell, here at Design Lab, we're building we're building architectural housing for genetically modified algae, and they look like this, and they glow in the dark, and there's a concentration gradient, and you can even spell your name on it, yada, yada, yada. So I'm just going to skip this. Thank you. All right. So me and Papaya will accept questions.
Hello, Professor, something practical. Are they developing anything to help men regrow hair? Thank you.
Well, sir, you just take a flight to Istanbul, and there are so many places where you can get this done for the low price of $2,000. And you can also get like really good food there. So it's done. Any other questions or comments are welcome. Yes.
Hi. Just a quick question about the speculative biology. How would you define speculative in this sense? Speculation is, it's a term that comes from, I think, finance as well. And speculation became, as a term, it became a lot more important because it started to become very difficult to predict near future, since things are happening at a very fast rate. So speculation here isn't like a flight of fancy. For instance, I wouldn't think of Marvel or DC Comics and the heroes they come up with as speculative, because they can fly, shoot lasers from their eyes, have the properties of a bat, etc. Bat or spider, or both. Spider, I think. So speculative in that sense is really based on what's here now and what's coming next, and thinking through the applications, the implications of what's coming next. I hope this helps. No one is going to ask a question to my papaya? Yes.
What's so special about your papaya, among things?
What is it?
What's modified about your papaya? Is it just like what you mentioned, the rainbow papaya?
So this was, I forget the year now. The first one was tomato. Like 1994 maybe. I'm confusing the dates probably. But this one entered the market around 2013. And for the longest time, I love papaya for breakfast. It's great with coffee. For the longest time, I didn't know that this was genetically modified. So it's genetically modified to be disease resistant. Was that the question?
Yeah, what was just genetically modified about it? And then I guess also beyond that, then I've read that there's apparently projects to genetically modify food to remove their food allergens and whatnot, but have there been any projects in speculative biology to modify something that can remove allergens from food, like bacteria that produces an enzyme that might denature the allergenic proteins in such a way that they can avoid cross-contamination in surfaces or that sort of thing? Or has it just been limited to reducing it at the source as opposed to at the destination?
So as far as I know, the crops that are genetically modified are either modified against a disease or they are modified against drought sometimes. Now there's climate resilient crops. But I read about what is it called? There's a name for it. Crops that don't cause allergies. So a lot of these things are possible.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Do you know exactly what lab-grown meat is made of?
lab-grown meat is made of muscle tissue. So muscle cells.
Muscle cells that can come from, let's say, any mammal or any sort of animal?
So as we saw in the project of Theresa Schubert, it could be your own thigh. Like she took a part from her thigh and she grew that. You need a substrate. I think she used animal blood plasma. But currently it's cow meat that's being grown. But I found papers, I mean, I could just go on with these slides. I found papers that which were discussing which breed to use, what part of the animal to use, which muscle cell to choose, etc. Because there's a huge variety and diversity out there.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you.
Of course. All right.
Anyone else? Well, thank you for joining. Oh, one last question down there.
My question would be about biocontainment.
Pardon me?
Biocontainment.
Containment,
yeah.
Yes.
So all of those species, they're not part of the biosphere. And when you're modifying them, I guess the good example would be the glyphosate-resistant corn.
Right.
Right? But other species, if they have advantage, not like zombie salmon, but
right,
faster salmon, probably going to take over. So
right.
What are sort of general approaches to biocontainment, and governments, are they thinking about it?
This is a really, really good question. I'm so glad you asked this question. It's a concern for me with the algae, GMO algae that I'm working with too. But I can give you like a response coming from the salmon product that they're pushing in the market. I studied their website extensively. So they're making it very clear that this is not happening in open sea. There's going to be zero contamination. They don't have a video, but they have pictures of these like cylindrical ponds where they grow the salmon so that they can like swim in captivity. So they're keeping it contained in their own facilities. But I mean, like, you can grab a bunch, I guess, and then like take it out. And we don't know what could happen. A really good example that comes to mind around fish is Lake Victoria in Africa. Lake Victoria was this pristine ecosystem. And in the 60s, maybe in the 80s, someone introduces Nile perch, a species that don't belong there. And the Nile perch is heavily desired by Michelin restaurants across Europe. It's a tasty fish, grows fast. It can reach like a meter or beyond. But what happened was Nile perch ate up everything in Lake Victoria and then started eating its young because there was nothing else to eat. So it completely obliterated the food web in Lake Victoria. So there is this conversation about invasive species, which is also juxtaposed with the conversation around genetically modified organisms. So species evolved in a niche, and there's a reason for that. When you take them out and put it somewhere else, you're completely changing the balance of the ecosystem. But again, to answer your question, Europe is really good at regulation, but there are a lot of countries who don't even talk about this. All right. Who wants to get dinner now? Yes? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
I hope to see you around.